I love the 7th chapter of the Gita. I've been reading this book for 33, 34 years now, every day. And so, I like the whole text. I like every single verse in the book. I like all the chapters. I like all the different commentaries. I'm a big fan of the Bhagavad Gita. But I really, when I teach serially and we go through chronologically, I really like the 7th chapter. And I like it because we get into actual theology. The first 6 chapters of the Gita, and commentators have been saying this for 1,500 years, the first 6 chapters are about doing your duty in the self. The second 6 chapters, so a concept of self and doing your duty. The second 6 chapters are about God and the self in relationship to God, and the world in relationship to God. Really, and so it's a traditional theology is an explanation of how the world comes from God, how we come from God, and how everything is therefore connected to the divine. There are some forms of dualism, like, big chunks of Christianity, that say the world came from nothing, but that everything came from God. If the world comes from nothing, then nothing in the world has to be intrinsically linked to God, and the world can be rejectable as mammon, as of the devil, and then you kind of you get this radical dualism where the world's bad and women are bad and money's bad and the body's bad, and you get this dualism where you're anti this world. You're pro transcendence, that world. You're anti this world and you're pro that world. So there are versions of theology that don't connect the world to God, but they can't completely disconnect the world from God. Because if they completely disconnected the world from God, what wouldn't you have?
God. Or the world.
Let's say God, through his omnipotence, created a world which had absolutely nothing to do with him. If you completely disconnect this world from God, then you don't have any possibility of connecting with God. You don't have any religion. You don't have any sacred tradition. You don't have any sacred texts. You follow? So as much as you want to disconnect the world from God, if you have a form of dualism and it's God and Satan and good and evil and mammon and transcendence, which is a biblical term for material, matter, mammon, you can't completely disconnect the world from God because you've still got to leave room for scripture and tradition and the deity and you having access to that deity. You follow? And so there's no way to really get rid of it entirely. Many theologies, including our own, seek to connect the world to God. And by doing so, show how everything has value and everything has purpose. And everything can ultimately be used in the pursuit of the divine. Does that make sense? So I like the 7th chapter because there's a really marked shift that takes place. And things get straightforwardly theistic. Krishna's not hiding at the end of every chapter. There's not a stray verse or two that is the highlight of the chapter where God puts himself forward. But Krishna discusses himself, his relationship to the world, how to connect with him, etc., in full detail. in a very plain and straightforward way. That's a shift. The first 6 chapters are chock full of devotion and chock full of reasons to be devoted to divinity, and chock full of amazing ways in which Krishna interacts with the world. But like I said, although those things are in every chapter, and they really represent the apex of every chapter, it's not the entire focus of the first 6 chapters. There's a sense in which we are, I wouldn't say beating around the bush, but we're warming up. You know? Like if you're a fan of Muay Thai. Muay Thai is Thai boxing. Muay Thai is Thai boxing. And so Muay means fighting, or sometimes it means dance too, but it means fighting or boxing. So Muay Thai, Thai fighting, the fighting of Thailand. The Khmer kingdom, the original kingdom, not Khmer Rouge, which is the nationalistic, genocidal movement that killed 3 million people, that was led by Pol Pot in Cambodia in the 70s. Not that. But the original Khmer kingdom was Thailand and Cambodia. And it was a Vaishnav kingdom. Angkor Wat, A-N-K-R-G-O-R, new word W-A-T, is the largest religious structure in the world, to my knowledge. And it's a temple of Vishnu. A 12th, 13th century Khmer temple of Vishnu, built by the king, who was a Vaishnava. And if you look at the tattoos from that time, they have a whole system of tattooing called Yant Sak. Yant Sak. Sak is their term for sadhu, and Yant is their term for yantra. And so the Yant Sak, or Sakyant, that's what it's called, Sakyant. It's a traditional method of tattooing with, they have the stick and they dip it in ink, like the old school, like the way the Maoris do it. And their ultimate tattoo that you can get, they won't give it to you right off the bat, but their ultimate tattoo is Hanuman. 5-faced Hanuman. They also do a Sudarshan chakra. And it's a whole thing, it's like a whole thing. And they chant mantras, and Ram is like is the deity of even nowadays. Like Ram is so famous in Thailand. They've sort of lost the devotion to Ram as Vaishnavas, and they've all become official Buddhists, and then Ram's become their cultural heritage as opposed to the deity they worship. But Hanuman and Ram are all over the place. And so there's even techniques like Hanuman flies to Lanka as like a jumping knee technique. So even the techniques in Muay Thai, in Thai boxing, are named after Hanuman. The tattoos are related to Hanuman. I don't know how I got into this. Oh my God.
Talking about the Khmer kingdom.
Yeah, I know, but before that, I got into Muay Thai to start with. Now I remember. So anyway, if you go to a traditional Muay Thai fight in Thailand, the first round of the fight, nobody tries to knock each other out. They throw a few techniques, but they kind of warm up with each other. And then they put on a show. But they don't throw elbows and knees and really heavy techniques and try to kick each other's heads off in the first round. They use that round to warm up. It's not like that in Western boxing. In Western boxing, it's very common that, like a Mike Tyson or a very dominant fighter, like a Mike Tyson or a Roy Jones Jr., they'll go out and KO people in the first round or two. They'll just go out and headhunt and put the punishment on right out the gate. Especially if they don't think they have a great gas tank, they'll try to finish the fight quickly. In the Thai culture, there's kind of a dance they do in the beginning. There's actually a Ram Muay, which is like the Ram dance that they do at the beginning of a Muay Thai fight. And they say it's to their guru, but really it's actually to Ram. It's like movements of Hanuman in devotion to Ram. And they do it at the beginning of every single Muay Thai fight, traditional Muay Thai fight, and it's called Ram Muay. Actually, if you get serious sakyant, serious traditional Thai tattoos, they're done by a Buddhist monk who's trained in this art, and he chants mantras the entire time he's tattooing you. And after he's done tattooing you, he installs the mantra as a deity on your body. And does an abhishek and bathes the deity that's now on your body with auspicious ingredients, just like we do an abhishek for the deity. And they'll never tattoo below your waist, and they oftentimes tattoo on the neck or the head because that's like the highest part of the body. And then you go and pay respects to your guru every year, and he sort of like revitalizes the tattoo so it doesn't lose its shakti. It's a whole thing. And Sudarshan Chakra in the Thai style is very popular. These are like the high-level tattoos. They won't give them to Westerners. You have to get many tattoos in your body. And if you go to Cambodia, which is way more backwards than Thailand, then the Buddhist monks have these tattoos all over their body. Because it's kind of like it's got more of the traditional culture, the Khmer culture, which is anyways given way to the Thai culture and the Buddhist culture, but the remnants are still there. If you go to the king's palace, he has Bhagavad Gita verses on his wall, inscribed on the wall, carved in the stone on the wall. It's a huge connection with Hinduism in Thailand, and it even went as far down as Indonesia. Indonesia's got the whole Garuda Airlines, the national airline of Indonesia. I don't know if it still exists, but it's called Garuda Airlines. Like Philippine Airlines, Indonesian Airlines. So the airline is called Garuda Airlines. I've flown to India on Garuda Airlines before. I thought it was like the coolest thing ever. So anyway, a lot of times in a traditional setting, or even nowadays, people kind of warm up, And so Krishna's been warming up for 6 chapters. He's been setting the stage. He's been seeding things, placing seeds. But he hasn't just come out the gate and said everything in the first few verses. He's warmed us up, because sometimes you can't hear deeper philosophy until you've heard some initial stuff. And so it becomes almost a disservice to go too big, too fast. You're just going to blow somebody out, and then it ruins it for them. And then if they ever do become receptive, they won't be, because you told them too much too quick, and they kind of cross that off their list. It's all about timing, So I like the 7th chapter so much, because now Krishna has warmed up sufficiently. We're into the 2nd or 3rd round of a Muay Thai fight, and Krishna can really break out the big guns and lay things out for us. And it's you'll see, everything changes. Like the commentators for 1,500 years have been saying, these 6 chapters about this, and these next 6 are about this. And you'll see why. It's not hard to see why they would have noticed this, because there's a real change that takes place. All right, so Krishna says, chapter 7, first verse, Krishna says, Now hear how by practicing yoga in full consciousness of me, with mind attached to me, you can know me in full, free from doubt. Mai asakta manaha, with your mind attached to me. That's like very direct. The first words are, you should be attached to me. First words out of Krishna's mouth. Yogam yunjam madashraya. Madashraya means taking shelter of me. Practicing yoga, or yoga in yoga. Asangshayan samagramam yasyasi. And you can know me, you will know me completely and free from any doubt. Touch Shrinu. Listen to that. It's very straightforward, right? Your mind's attached to me. You've taken shelter of me. You will know me free from all doubt. I shall now declare to you in full this knowledge, both phenomenal and numinous. This being known, nothing further shall remain for you to know. So, having known this, there's nothing more that remains for you to know. I'm going to explain this fully. And Krishna says both phenomenal and numinous. That's a translation of jnana vijnana. Jnana vijnana is a compound, it's very common in Sanskrit. It means knowledge and then special knowledge. V means special. Can be specially bad. Vipad means like really bad. Vikarmi means really bad karma. And that can be really good. Vimukti means really, really intense mukti, liberation. So V modifies and makes something more intense. If it's in front of a bad word, it becomes a really bad word. If it's in front of a good word, it becomes a really good word. So jnana vijnana, knowledge, special knowledge. Sometimes you might translate this as book knowledge and practical knowledge, theoretical knowledge and applied knowledge, general knowledge and scientific knowledge, knowledge of the self and knowledge of God. You can play with it any way you want to, but it's knowledge and then full knowledge. So Prabhupada goes and does it as phenomenal and numinous. Nous is Greek for mind. And so it becomes, numinous is a word used by René Descartes to talk about when you talk about the mind-body distinction. That there's the mind and then there's the body. So the phenomenal world in René Descartes' dualism is the world of appearance, the world around us. The noumenal world, according to René Descartes, Prabhupada translates as numinous, but the René Descartes' word was noumenal. So he kind of, he makes it clear it's not exactly the same thing because he translates it a little bit differently. And so the noumenal world was the world of mind. This sounds like this sort of archaic philosophical idea people had about the nature of the world, body, mind, distinction. It doesn't really make sense. It's almost like, what are you talking about? But it does make sense. We are conscious. We have thoughts. We can't find consciousness in the brain. We can find correlates of consciousness, but we don't find consciousness in the brain. Consciousness has features that are just totally, you could never, if you were to for instance, if you knew all the laws of physics, then the Big Bang has to occur. The universe has to move out. Entropy has to take place. Things have to cool down and move from an organized to a chaotic state. If you understand the preconditions in physics, you can then figure out what's going to happen. Consciousness is a red herring. It doesn't fit. Why are we conscious? Why do we think and feel? Why are we not just a bag of chemicals that just interacts with each other? How is consciousness an obvious result of evolution and the chemical world interacting? Additionally, there are features about consciousness that defy anything which exists in nature. Although we can use emergence to describe physical phenomena, using emergence to describe consciousness is inappropriate because consciousness is categorically different, whereas emergence can't always be traced very easily back to the original precursors and shown to come from those precursors. Like a traffic jam is a classic case of emergence. But that's easy enough by physical laws to show how a traffic jam occurs from one car slowing down, another car slow down more, another car slow down a little more. Or hurricanes. But when we're looking at consciousness, we're looking at something which is categorically different than matter, that has no reason why it should have to evolve. Looking at this, looking at the nature of consciousness, looking at things like free will, a sense of past and future, thoughts about things, you're left in a world where there's like two separate realities. Almost like quantum and classical mechanics, where like small objects do quantum leaps and all sorts of other stuff. But big objects move in very, very gradual, regulated ways. And these two things are simultaneously true. Small objects move in this way, big objects move in this way, but big objects are made up of small objects, and how do those two things interface? They don't know. That's what the mind-body problem still is today. And all you really get out of modern atheist philosophy is just a denial of consciousness, just a statement that, it's just, you don't have to bother, don't worry about that. We can show correlates and that's enough. Don't ask yourself these questions like, why are we conscious? And why does it feel like something to be me? And why do I have this private, intimate experience of reality and the smell of roses and the taste of water? And, this like a world of qualia is what it's called, this world of experience. Chemicals don't have a world of experience. That's the mind-body problem. Now, it might have been more primitively thought of, by Rene Descartes, because they didn't have like mapping of the brain and stuff like that, which we still don't have, but we have some of it anyway. They didn't have, MRIs, magnetic resonant imaging. They didn't have stuff like that they could, take deep looks at the brain scans and stuff like that. And so, but the critical point that there's a real difference between consciousness and matter, that's been around forever. We experience that. We don't ask those questions, but we experience it. We don't think about it. We just assume, they got it all figured out. But they don't have it figured out. We don't even know how life comes from chemicals. They never made life from chemicals. Life comes from life. They've never made artificial intelligence. So, that's the mind-body problem. It's still a problem. It's still a problem. There is no explanation for it. And mostly modern atheistic philosophers just don't get into it. They just say, it's not important. They deny it. So, Prabhupada chooses to render jnana and vijnana as knowledge of the world and knowledge of the self. Knowledge of matter and knowledge of spirit. And you'll see why in a minute. Let's keep going. All the stuff I said isn't as random as it sounds. You'll see in a minute. Out of many thousands of men, one may endeavor for perfection, and of those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. What Krishna's saying here is it's really rare to find genuine spiritual knowledge. It's really rare to understand Krishna. And so if he's going to explain it to us, we should really listen It's amazing how hard it is for people to listen. People space out all the time. And so Krishna's saying here, don't space out. Pay attention. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. Altogether, these 8 constitute my separated material energies. All right? Krishna just gave us a verse, and he compacted the entire world into 8 categories. Earth, water, fire, air, and space. Mind, intelligence, and ego. It's not just the world of stuff. Amazingly, the world of mind for René Descartes is included in the world of stuff, indicating that for us we have 3 things. We have the physical world, the mental world, and then we have the spiritual reality. And physical and mental we see as being 2 variations of the same, what's ultimately material. Normally it's a 2-part system, about a world of mind and a world of matter. But for us we have a 3-part system, a world of mind and matter, both material, one more subtle than the other, and then a world of consciousness, pure consciousness. We distill consciousness. You have thoughts. You're not those thoughts. How do you know? Because you can think about your thoughts. You can control your thoughts. Are you that ability to control your thoughts? That's intelligence. No, there's a basic sense of self that goes even beyond your ability to control your thoughts, a basic sense of identity. That's ego. That's false ego. Then you can go beyond that. You go to sleep at night. You have no sense of self, no thoughts whatsoever, but you still wake up the next day and you exist. There's some deeper level of consciousness which persists even in sleep. And this way we try to distill down what is consciousness in its purest form. We're going to separate that from everything else. And so we have gross and subtle matter and then consciousness. So Krishna here compacts in a single verse the entire material world. Earth, water, fire, air, space, mind, intelligence, false ego, 8 things. And those things are mam prakriti, my energy. But they are bhina prakriti, they are my separated energy. They still belong to Krishna. It's not completely divorced from Krishna, but it's been separated. Matter is separated spirit. Matter still belongs to Krishna, but it's separated. Again, this gets back into a theory of how the world comes from God and has some relationship to God, but not a complete relationship to God. And so you're still maintaining some connection, but not a full connection. Spirit would be Krishna's unseparated energy, Krishna's personal energy. Besides these 8 things that make up my separated energy, there's another superior energy of mine, which comprises the living entities who are exploiting the resources of this material inferior nature. So now you've got another thing. You've got my superior energy, my para prakriti. It's also my energy, but it's my superior energy. And that superior energy dharyate, it's holding this world, it's using this world. So we are spiritual beings in the material world, making use of the material world. Sometimes from the light of ourselves, we look at the world in almost a fetishistic way, and we look at the world and we empower the world to be glowing and amazing and take up all of our thought and energy. And we get excited about the material world. But it's really the self which is exciting. It is the self misidentifies with the world, and the world becomes important. Like a child may misidentify with a stupid piece of plastic, and all of a sudden that piece of plastic becomes the most important thing in the world in that child's mind. We do that with the material world, with cars and people and stuff, money. And we think it's the most important thing in the world. And then that thing becomes bright, like cellophane, like celluloid. Film becomes, when you shine a light through it, it comes to life on the screen. And it looks like there's like something going on there, but there's nothing going on there. It's just a It's just a piece of film. But that light makes it come to life. The light of the soul illuminates the material world and makes the material world seem so amazing, but it's actually the self that's amazing. Yoga, Krishna, has thus far been talking about turning inwards and looking within instead of looking outside. But now we're going to start to see that when you look within, you also see that God is there. Or you look up instead of looking out, and you see God is there. And so it's an evolution from the initial ideas which have been expressed to a proper theology which includes a place for God as the genesis of everything, as the ultimate resting place of everything. So those, jnana, vijnana, Prabhupada's translation works pretty well, right? And so that numinous is now not just Rene Descartes' noumenal world. It's numinous, which is a little bit of a different term, and Prabhupada's trying to say something which is made purely of consciousness, instead of subtle matter in the form of intelligence and mind. And so what you get here is a dualism, but the difference between this dualism and the other dualism, which says the world was created by nothing, and therefore the world has nothing to do with God, and therefore you hate things in this world, and you're just looking at that world. The difference is God's actually owning that both these things are part of Him, which leaves the possibility of this world becoming a stimulus for thinking of divinity. This is why I love this chapter. It's just a straight theology. It's just like everything you could ever want. Krishna has in some ways said more in these 5 verses than he has in the entire Gita up until this point. He's just owned the material, the spiritual world, all of us, and matter, pointed to a monism, but it's a qualified monism because everything comes from God. Not everything is equal. He's explained our predicament being in this world. He's identified himself as the ultimate object of knowledge. And we're now in a full-blown catechism, a full-blown systematic explanation of the core ideals of the Gita and its theology and its philosophy, which includes divinity. And a philosophy which includes divinity is called a theology. All created beings have their source in these 2 natures, a body and a mind. Again, I got in this whole Rene Descartes thing, the body-mind problem. That's because we're getting a qualified monism which has room for both these realities, but not both these realities as distinct realities where never the twain shall meet. Both those realities as a semi-permeable membrane that you can get through. That's why when you offer food to Krishna, it becomes spiritualized. When you offer a lamp to Krishna, it becomes spiritualized. When you offer yourself to Krishna, you become spiritualized. And so although matter exists, matter doesn't exist as some sort of permanent state of reality. Matter exists until you take the trouble to see how things are connected to Krishna, and then all of a sudden the veil is lifted and you can see through the matrix and you can see that actually Krishna has always been there. All created beings have their source in these 2 natures. Of all this material and all the spiritual in this world, know for certain that I am both the origin and the dissolution. I'm the Alpha and the Omega. I'm Prabhava Pralaya. Prabhava means the origin, and then Pralaya means the dissolution. Prabhava Pralaya cha. Krishna. I'm completely the origin and the dissolution of everything. Again, there's that ownership. So now there's no devil, there's no hell, there's nothing really outside of Krishna's purview. It's one of the major problems I have, theologically speaking, with Christianity. They posit the existence of a hell, which is truly divorced from God. But how can anything be truly divorced from God? How can that thing even exist without God maintaining it? It's a huge deficiency in the Christianity of 2.9 billion people. I'm willing to grant 100 million people have a different belief, but at least 2.9 billion of the 3 billion Christians in the world have this erroneous belief, at least 97%, if not 99%. Uh, 2 points, that'd be 90%. My bad. Sorry, I did my math wrong. 2.7 billion would be 90%. So at least 90%. It's probably more like, I said 2.9 million? I said 2.9 million. It's 97%. I was right. I made a mistake. I thought I was wrong. Yeah, 2.9 million, 97%. At least that much. If not 2.95 million. Maybe there's 50 million Christians who don't believe this. But mostly there's this idea of an eternal hell that's completely divorced from God, and Satan who's divorced from God. But how do these things even exist without God's maintaining them? Without the sustenance of reality maintaining them? It's an improper notion of an omnipotent deity. It's an improper understanding of a theistic cosmology, of how everything is created and dependent on God. It's like saying something exists that physics created that doesn't follow the laws of physics. That's not dependent on physics. It's an improper understanding of the fundamental nature of God and the all-pervasive and permanent nature of God's dominion over everything. So we don't have that here. We have a spirit and matter, but those things are both in some way connected to Krishna. There is no truth superior to me. Everything rests upon me as pearls are strung on a thread. What a beautiful verse. This is a verse you could get like tattooed on your neck. As pearls are strung on a thread. There's no truth superior to me. There's nothing beyond me. It's a really major theological statement about the importance of God. There's a pretty heavy implication of this. You should dedicate your life to understanding God. Sometimes, you'll see, they'll be critiquing a cult. They'll have some cult experts. They'll be saying, these people got indoctrinated in this cult. They need time to recover. They need support of their friends and family. What does that mean? That means they need other people to help indoctrinate them in a different way. You follow? They don't bother mentioning. What they have to say is, these beliefs are wrong beliefs. These beliefs are right beliefs. Therefore, we have to indoctrinate people with these beliefs. But they say, they lost themselves. Well, what was their self? What was their previous self, or the self they're going to go back to? It's some social construct from other people who've taught them. It's like when you go, don't judge. Well, you just judge me for judging. So obviously you don't have a problem with judgment. You just have a problem with the way I judge. So why don't you not be lazy and take the trouble to argue what it is, what I'm saying that you don't agree with, where I'm wrong. Sometimes they'll say, they were spending all their time with the cult. Hey man, my kid does Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He does Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu twice a day. If he misses one class, and each class is like hours. If he misses one class a day, the coach starts freaking out. Where were you? If he wants to travel, with his family to go somewhere, the coach is like, "Are you sure he really needs to go on that trip? He's going to miss out on 2 weeks of training." You go to AA, same thing. You get into weightlifting. It's like your whole day. Tons of guys are like, I lost my family, I lost my wife and my kids, for iron on a bar. And I got to admit, I don't regret it. Are you kidding me? We do all sorts of stuff when we value something. We spend so much time on stuff. But if you want to spend your time on something spiritual, all of a sudden that's unhealthy. But if you want to fall in love and spend all your time with your partner, nobody says squat. You want to dive into your work and live at your job, sleep. You get a doctor's degree. What's the apex profession? You become a doctor. What do? You work 80 hours, you take speed, and you sleep at the hospital. You don't even bother going home. They get cots for you to just sleep there. It's not even worth going home. You want to be an Olympic athlete? Forget about it. You want to get into equestrian or wrestling? My kids wrestle. My kid's the number one ranked wrestler in the state at his age, at his weight class. It's a bummer because he could have competed this year and just crushed everybody underfoot. He was the number one ranked wrestler. Those people who like are into wrestling, and the thing is, we do it as like a part-time gig. It's like a little bit of fun that we do. Everybody else, it's like every weekend they're driving across the country. They homeschool their kids so they can just wrestle all the time. Their whole life revolves around their kid wrestling. And they're like, what comes of it? They go to college and wrestle. Maybe they make it to the Olympics, and then they do nothing with it. There's no way to monetize it unless they get into the hurt business and get into mixed martial arts. That's the only way. There is no professional wrestling that actually makes money, unless you're a pro wrestler, which just means like gymnastics, scripted stuff. But in terms of like actual wrestling, there's no way to make money doing it. Unless you let people punch you in the face. It's like fencing. Oh, I became a master fencer. I won the Olympics. Yeah, what would that get you? Like you're working at Starbucks? You know? There's no true superior to me. All reality rests on me like pearls strung on a thread. The very notion of divinity is this notion. That there is one thing you can study, and you've studied everything. There's one thing you can understand, and you've understood everything. There's one place you can go, and you've been everywhere. There's one thing you can do, and you've done everything. That's the idea of God. It's that big of an idea. It's such a big idea that once you see that idea, once you experience that idea, that's it, it's over. The rest of your life is spent pursuing that idea. Anything else becomes a failure of your life. There is no balance. The balance within theology is that you stay faithful to divinity, and then you pack in whatever else you can get in without compromising your faith and your fidelity to, and your loyalty to, and your commitment to divinity. You could argue that my conception of divinity is wrong. You could argue that my religion is bogus. You could argue that we can't actually deliver the goods, whatever. But you cannot argue that spirituality should not be the number one goal of anybody whose life who believes in it. It's not a hobby. It's everything. To say it's like the cure for every disease known to man is an insult to spirituality. To say it's like saving every child, feeding every person in the universe is an insult to spirituality. It's infinitely greater than those incredibly meritorious things, the greatest things I can think of. There is no true superior to me. Everything rests on me as pearls are strung on a thread. The whole world is connected to me, if you have the eyes to see it. And then Krishna explains, I'm the taste of water, the light of the sun and the moon, the syllable Om in the Vedic mantras, the sound in ether, ability in mankind, the fragrance of the earth, heat and fire, the life of all that lives, the penances of the ascetics, the original seed of all existence, the intelligence of the intelligent, and the prowess of all powerful men, the strength of the strong, devoid of passion and desire. I'm sex life, which is not contrary to religious principles. Know that all states of being, be they goodness, passion, or ignorance, are manifested by my energy. I am in one sense everything, but I am independent. I'm not under the modes of material nature, for they, on the contrary, are within me. This is like everything. Everything's strung on me like pearls are strung on a thread. The whole reality. What do you mean? I mean, I'm the taste of water. That's water. I'm the fragrance of the earth. That's water and earth. I'm the heat of fire. That's water, earth, and fire. You follow? He's identifying himself with everything. I'm the sound in space. Space conducts sound. That's 4. And then what does he say about air? The syllable Om in the Vedic mantras, ability in man. I guess one of those is air. The life of all that lives, yeah, right? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it says Jivanam Sarvabhuteshu, the life of all beings. And so what you have here, maybe pranav and the sound and ether, I'm not sure. Maybe those are two distinct ones. I have to look at it. Let me take a look. Rasohamapsakonteya, that's water. Prabhashmi, that's the illumination of the sun and the moon. Pranav Sarva Vedeshu, I'm Pranav in the Vedas. Shabda Ke, I'm sound in the sky. So yeah, he might not even touch air, I'm not sure. But what Krishna is doing here, I'm sorry, I just digressed. I started studying the text a little bit. What Krishna is doing here is he's identifying himself with something in the world. He gave us a verse and said, earth, water, fire, air, ether. These are all my separate energies. Then he explains how he's in them, how you can look at them, and in their fundamental, most essential way, you can see Krishna behind it. And therefore, he's making this point that everything is strung on me like pearls are strung on a thread, and these things are ultimately connected to me in some way. He doesn't stop there. He's the intelligence of the intelligent, the power of man. So he also owns mind, intelligence, and ego. Then he gets even trickier. He says he's Dharma. He's Bala. Bala Balavatamaham. I am the strength of the strong. But then he says, sometimes Bala or strength is negative. It's used like in a bad way to exploit people. So then Krishna says, Kama Raga Vivarjitam. I'm that Bala which is free from kama and rag, desire and attachment. So I'm strength, which is dispassionate. I'm strength, which is righteous. You follow? It's interesting. So Krishna troubleshoots it, because theoretically, strength could be seen as a bad thing. So Krishna troubleshoots it to get rid of the bad things. But then you're left wondering, well, where does calm come from? Where does desire come from? If Krishna's strength free from desire, then desire has to exist. Where does desire come from? Now you could say, well, desire comes from us, not from God. You could say that. That works. But Krishna takes a step further. He says, I'm also kama. Kamosmi. I'm lust. I'm desire. Provided it's dharma aviruddha. It's not against dharma. And so he tries to show you how if you look at the world right, for instance, so it's like we like to think, like if you think of like a boogeyman, like a child molester is like the biggest boogeyman I can think of. And I used to think of child molesters as being like almost like they have horns, like they're like demons, Then I met a child molester. And it was creepy, but I couldn't just hate them and see them as like a boogeyman. He told me he was molested by his brother growing up, made to dress up as a woman as a child, was molested by his brother. He grew up. He did the same thing. He got caught. He went to jail. He's in recovery. He goes to meetings every day. He doesn't have to go to meetings anymore. It's not a condition of his parole anymore, but he goes there anyway. He tells everybody in the neighborhood he lives in. He doesn't interact with kids anymore at all in his life. He hates the fact that he's attracted to children. You follow? And I couldn't hate him as much as I wanted to. It was easy when I could just say he was bad. Or that's the devil. That's evil. It was easy, but we don't have a philosophy of evil. We have a philosophy of ignorance, which can be cured by knowledge. So no one gets hated. It's just we hate the sin, but not the sinner. It's just the ramifications of a holistic worldview where everything is included within divinity. So, what is that? That horrible desire for children? Well, it's like sexual desire, but directed in the wrong place. It's directed in the wrong place. His wires got messed up. But that desire isn't evil. It's just that desire is being misused. That drug isn't evil. That drug probably has a medicinal purpose, but it's being misused. That desire isn't evil. It's just being used for the wrong purpose. That knife isn't bad. It's just in the hands of a thief that it becomes bad. In the hands of a surgeon, it can help. And Krishna's starting to troubleshoot the world so you can start to see how nothing's fundamentally bad. Everything can be connected to God. That doesn't mean that we justify crimes. It means that we understand that ignorance caused those things. And we can also understand how to edify people and how to cure people and how to dig in. And then Krishna goes big, and we'll finish with this point. Know that all states of being, he uses the gunas, rajas, tamas, and sattva. because that's kind of like a theory of everything in the material world. So everything, even tamas, comes from me. Even tamas comes from me. You follow? They're all mata. They're all from me. Eva iti. Eva iti, it should say. Let me look it up. Mata eva iti. Thus, these things all, ye mata, they're all from me. Even tamas, even darkness. Because without darkness, we wouldn't have free will. We have to be able to turn away from divinity. Otherwise, we don't have free will. Even the ability to be blinded comes from God. It's based on your desire to be blinded. But because you're dependent on God for everything, even the ability to be blind is given by God. But that doesn't take away your free will for choosing. So then he says, these things all come from me, but not to aham teshu. I'm not in them. Te mai, they are in me. And this is a heavy, heavy philosophical idea that occurs for the first time in our text, in the history of world literature. It's called Panentheism. The idea that everything is within divinity, but divinity is beyond everything. Everything is within divinity. Everything is divine. That's pantheism. Panentheism is everything is within divinity, and that still allows for God to exist as a transcendent reality beyond the mere totality of matter, and that's what's posited by Krishna. Not teshu, I'm not in them. Te mai, they are in me. What a radical idea. You now have everything you could ever want. A transcendent deity who's also available in this world. A way to see everything in this world is connected to God, and it doesn't stop you from going to that world and just make you sit here. You have immanence right here in front of you, and transcendence over there as well. What brilliant ideas, how well put together. Christian 12 verses just laid out what you could spend 1,000 years writing 1,000 books about. That's why I like this chapter. Now we're getting off the ground. Now we're getting a theology. Now we're getting something you can memorize, you can learn, you can understand, you can meditate on, that allows you to look at this world and see it totally different. And if you look at this world and see Krishna everywhere, then Krishna, the transcendent being who's beyond this world, who gives rise to this world, is connected to this world, who you see symbols of in this world, you see stimuli that stimulates you towards Krishna in this world. You see threads that lead you back to Krishna. Then Krishna becomes the great love of your life. And spirituality becomes your raison d'etre, your reason for existence. It becomes everything. And that's not wrong. It's just the ramifications of serious theism. People don't like it. They want you to do theism the same way you do whittling, you're into crocheting or something like that, or you're into knitting, and you're allowed to give that much energy to your spirituality. But that's ultimately not the way it works. When you have a big enough idea, then everything gets subsumed within it. You have a theory of everything. And that theory of everything is a person, and the place where you can repose your love, then you can fall in love with the origin of all existence. There's nothing wrong with committing. There's nothing wrong with giving your heart and soul. There's nothing wrong with falling in love with spirituality. There's a problem with bad theology, bad philosophy, bad ideas about the nature of the divine. But there's nothing wrong with the idea of an all-inclusive concept of divinity that allows you to give your whole life to that thing. And now, because Krishna is beyond the world, deluded by the three modes, the whole world does not know me, who am above the modes. So although everything is here, and you can see me here, you can't, because you're too wrapped up in the illusion. You can't see the big picture, how I'm above. You follow? You get wrapped up in the trees, and you can't see the forest maker. You follow? So then what do? This divine energy of mine, consisting of the modes of nature, is difficult to overcome. Yeah, we're small, we're tiny, we're infinitesimal, we're dependent. We can't overcome Maya, we can't overcome illusion, but those who have surrendered to me can easily cross beyond it. If we surrender to Krishna, because he's beyond this world, because he's created this world, he can pull us up. He can pick us up. And there's a philosophy of grace. And so Krishna even manages to get divine grace woven into his theology in 14 verses. You get everything you could ever want in a theology right here in 14 verses. You could actually spend the rest of your life reading these 14 verses and never run out of subject matter. These verses are infinite. I could spend every day for the rest of my life commenting on these verses, never run out of things to say. We could make a newspaper about these 14 verses, never run out of things to say. Every word, every syllable, every idea is pregnant and unlimited. And we'll end with that. I think we gave a decent class. I think we covered some stuff. We moved through a few verses, made some points. Yeah, thank you, IGTV. We'll see you guys another time. If you have any questions on Zoom,